What's going on, everyone? It's Justin here, and today we're going to be comparing Samsung versus Apple in 2023, and that is between the iPhone 15 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. We're going to go through the categories of hardware, a little bit on software, the specs, optimizations, as well as the camera, of course, and I'm going to try to keep it under 10 minutes because I know in the past I've done very long comparisons, but this is the first comparison in a while. So taking a look at the phone itself, you take a look at the back here, and the iPhone 15 Pro Max this year has a new material choice. It utilizes a grade 5 titanium, and that not only ensures more durability, but it also gives you a little bit of a lighter design as well. And when it comes to the weight of these two smartphones and how they feel in the hand, the iPhone 15 Pro Max comes in at a weight of about 220 grams, and the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra comes in at just about 230 grams. When it comes to how they feel in the hand, I personally think the iPhone 15 Pro Max has the edge here. I just like how it is rounded off, and I do like how the edges are just cornered a little bit nicer compared to last year where it had that stainless steel design, and I like how everything is also a satin finish because it doesn't show fingerprints. A huge advantage that the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra has though when it comes to its usability is the S Pen. And whether you choose to use the S Pen or not, it is a whole new area that is being unlocked that allows you to not only take advantage of the screen, but also take notes, draw things, illustrate things, and when it comes to a feature set, that is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. On the hardware front, the iPhone finally has USB Type-C, and on the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max, you have a maximum transfer speed of 10 gigabits per second, whereas on the Samsung Galaxy, you're limited to 5 gigabits per second. Being able to transfer and record directly to an SSD on the iPhone is great if you do plan to utilize the Apple log and the ProRes resolution, but in general, just being able to back up your phone, transfer files over, having that faster speed is great. As for the display quality itself, the iPhone 15 Pro Max's Super Retina XDR OLED screen features a 1280 by 2796 resolution, whereas the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra is a 3088 by 1440. And when it comes to peak brightness, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is now a 2000 nit peak brightness, whereas the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra is a 1750 nit peak brightness. The screen, of course, on both these smartphones at this price point is impressive. It looks great, the colors are great, they're nice and sharp, but I will say the Samsung Galaxy does have more of that punchy look, and that is something that we've known from the early generations. It is just a characteristic of the AMOLED display, but the OLED display on the iPhone looks incredible, and you really can't go wrong with either. So the next thing here is the specs. This is another category that is very subjective, but just for the sake of specs, the iPhone 15 Pro Max has the A17 Pro 3nm CPU as well as the Apple GPU. And over on the Samsung Galaxy side, it features the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is a 4nm architecture, and an Adreno 740. When it comes to objective comparisons, the iPhone proved to be a better performance in CPU and GPU testing with the new A17 Pro, but the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, I would say in a lot of ways because of the Android ecosystem, allows you to unlock more capabilities out of the hardware, and it also has many more specific features and apps that allow you to customize and take advantage of the full experience. And that's not to say that one is better than the other, but in terms of maximizing and unlocking the capabilities of the phone and utilizing multitasking to its fullest degree and integrations such as S Pen, that is where Android really gives you that advantage. Honestly, if I had to name the iOS 17 features right off the top of my head, I would say there are a lot of little refinements when it comes to usability and functionality, but I haven't noticed it to be like completely groundbreaking since the integration of widgets, which, as you know, Samsung and Android in general has had for so many years now. When it comes to the battery life though, these are two powerhouses of a smartphone. I personally had the iPhone for the past couple years as my main smartphone, and I found that the iPhone 14 Pro's battery was just not good. I had to charge it 2 to 3 times a day, and on the iPhone 15 Pro, after having it for a couple weeks, I could say that I've been getting battery life of about 1 day. It wasn't any more than that. I find that I still have to charge my phone around 7 p.m. and I have about 9.5 hours of screen on time. And that is to say, it is better than what I had on the 14 Pro, but it wasn't anything impressive. On paper, the battery of the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra is 5,000 milliamp hours, whereas on the iPhone, it is 4,442 milliamp hours. But of course, just like the processor, it comes down to the actual efficiency, the optimization in the software, and what it allows you to do. And so if you use your Samsung Galaxy at the peak brightness, you're not gonna get the best battery life, but at the same time, I found when it came to objective battery life, both the phones were able to get pretty close. On the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, I was getting probably around 7 to 8 hours on screen on time, and on the iPhone, I was usually able to get about 8 to 9 hours. But the phone is also quite a few months newer, and so that could factor as well. So now on to the cameras, and that is probably the biggest talk between these two smartphones. On paper, the main camera of the iPhone 15 Pro Max is a 48 megapixel f1.8 with a 24mm focal length, whereas on the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, it is 200 megapixels at an f1.7 aperture and 24mm as well. The periscope camera, which provides the optical zoom, is 12 megapixels at an f1.8 aperture on the iPhone, and it gives you the equivalent focal length of 5x optical, whereas on the Samsung Galaxy, it is a 10 megapixel f4.9, but gives you 230 millimeters, which is 10x optical, and in conjunction, it gives you a 100x hybrid zoom, which is impressive. And when it comes to the ultra-wide cameras, both these smartphones have a 12 megapixel camera at an f2.2 aperture that gives you a 13mm focal length. The Samsung Galaxy though does have one additional camera, and that is a 10 megapixel f2.4 at a 70mm focal length. So on paper, when you take a look at the 200 megapixel resolution, even though it isn't something that you're gonna use all the time, having that option is great if you really want to crop into photos. And honestly, the zoom on the Samsung Galaxy is impressive. The iPhone waited a long time to have an optical zoom camera that was more than 3x, and although it looks really good and it's able to let in a lot of light, I would say on a day-to-day practical scenario, 5x is more useful than a 10x, and due to the low aperture, it looks really good and it's actually photos that I would use. But from a practical standpoint, if you're someone who shoots a lot of landscapes or really wants to be able to get that extra zoom, the Samsung Galaxy, no doubt, is way better. But when it comes to the actual images, I would say this is where it comes in a little bit more subjectively, because both these phones are able to deliver amazing image quality, and the Samsung Galaxy just has a bit more punch to it, and that is out of camera. Personally, I like to edit my photos and I like to have a more raw base to work with, whereas the Samsung Galaxy, if you go ahead and like upload a photo as is, it is noticeably vivid and punchy and beautiful, but when it comes to camera tech, both these phones are very impressive and are at the pinnacle of the industry and are essentially the top 3 in both regards. When it comes to video though, I think the iPhone does do a better job. The Samsung Galaxy is able to record at an 8K resolution, whereas the iPhone caps at 4K, but thanks to the ProRes and the ability to record to an SSD and utilize Apple Log, which looks really good, I think the iPhone continues to be the better option when it comes to recording a lot of video. Whether it's for social media or professional use, I just like the look of the iPhone video more. As for the interface though, the Samsung Galaxy still gives you a lot more options when it comes to customizing, manually controlling, and taking full advantage of the hardware, which kind of seems to be a trend here, both in terms of software and in the camera itself. Being able to set all these settings specifically is really great, and as someone who knows how to use a professional camera and does that for a living, being able to unleash that is something that I really appreciate on the Samsung Galaxy side. I do really like the log though that you get on the iPhone, and I just think like out of camera, I still prefer the iPhone, but I really hope that Apple allows you to utilize more of the tools in a manual form for those who choose to do it. So at the end of the day, the iPhone 15 Pro Max or the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. I've got to say both companies took a relatively conservative approach in the past couple years, with not many major changes when it comes to design, hardware, and I think if you have a phone within the last 2 years, it is hard to go ahead and recommend the brand new model to jump to at this time. But I would say when it comes to a really feature-packed experience, the Samsung Galaxy is the option to go with. It has all the camera tech, it has the customization, it has the latest and greatest specs, a big battery, an S Pen, a large, beautiful display, whereas the iPhone, on the other hand, enables some small features that are going to be important for some, including ProRes, the USB-C, being able to record to an SSD and utilize log, as well as a 5x camera, and also having more focal lengths on the main cameras, thanks to the 48 megapixel resolution and the RAW. The iPhone 14 Pro Max was already a very complete phone, and I think the areas of flaws are still things that I noticed on flagship smartphones, and that is the battery life not being anything impressive. At the end of the day, these two are great phones, but they definitely come at a cost, and phones are getting so expensive. So you don't need these whole set of features that I've listed. Then going with a model that is like a step down or last year's model is not exactly a bad decision. As always, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to go ahead and drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all in the next one.